Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I have a very, very special guest with me right now. Of course, a brand new interview, as you guys know. But this is very cool because I am interviewing someone today that you may or may not have seen on YouTube, Instagram, all over the music world. Oh my goodness, she does a lot of stuff when it comes to the LA area. She's very LA based musician. She's made a lot of cool YouTube videos. Royals, that was a parody that she made along with Terrence Southern. She has, oh my God, there's so many out there. You might even recognize her from Vine. You might even recognize her from so much that she has done over the past few years that I've been gracious enough and thankful enough to be interviewing her today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, introducing the one and only Julia Price. How are you?
Oh God, I mean, that was a great introduction. I am doing great now. You're gonna just follow me around and be my hype man. That's great. I love her. You're like, you may have seen her everywhere. I'm like, that pretty much summarizes the last decade of my life. What are you doing? Everything. No, it's really great to be here. Lovely to meet you all virtually. So yeah.
Yeah, it's cool because thanks to a little halt in life, I mean, I think it's given us the opportunity to really kind of meet the people that you've always followed or get to know people that you haven't got to meet before. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, having being able to virtually connect right now. I think so too. It's interesting because I feel like people who maybe normally wouldn't have been able to, like, I sometimes do consulting work for one company called Founder Made, and they deal with like very high level CEOs and stuff like that. And they suddenly, all these CEOs that never have time to talk to people are like, can we like get on a virtual panel? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I think there is something about it's reminding people at the core of humanity. It's we want to connect, no matter how like high level you are or anything. So it has been pretty cool to see that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially now, with all the time in the world now, you could actually just be like, hey, we get to connect with fans. We get to connect with people that we've, known for years that we really haven't gotten to talk to. So I think this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things was when this first happened, I went through on Patreon and I just wrote to patrons and I said, does anyone want a song that they want to dedicate to someone? I'll just like write you a song or a cover, and things that normally there'd be no time for. It was nice to be able to like connect that way and get to know some of the people who have been supporting me for so long, and it was a really nice gift to give, because I think again, people have been over the years giving so much, and it's kind of like in the entertainment world there's this mentality of like, you do a gig, then you do the next gig, or Vine, you do a Vine, you do the next Vine, you do the next video. There's always just something else to do. And it was a chance to slow down and really get to know like who are the people that, I mean, you're watching me all the time. That's great. But like, who are you? Like I want to know. And so it was this really beautiful chance to kind of like, one guy asked me to write a song for his sister, and I was just like crying the whole time when I read the story about his sister. I'm like, oh my God. So yes, in conclusion, yes.
Well, that's awesome.
Coffee's kicking in, by the way. That's why I'm like, woo!
Hey, that's a great way to start off the morning. I always started off these interviews with a spitball or fireball question, just to get the mood in, just to get this, the vibe good set in or whatever. So the question I have for you, Julia, is to start things off is your hit single, or one of your hit singles, of course, because you have many. Your hit single, Royals, which you did a cover with Terrence Southern on. Very unique, very spontaneous music video indeed. Can you talk about what was the kind of the creation process behind that?
Yeah, so the way I work in general is you actually hit the nail on the head, spontaneous. I'm not someone who can sit down and plan out, a thing 3 months from now, because by then I'll have a totally different, I might want to do it, I might not. And it could be frustrating for people, but that's just not the way I work. So it's like, it kind of just, I heard the song and I was like, what is this song? Probably like most people at the time. I mean, it changed pop music for sure. And so I heard it and I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I remember going to look up the song. And I think at the time, the Lord video only had maybe 500,000 views on it. Mm-hmm. And I just had this gut feeling. I was like, I have to cover this. Taryn, we have to cover this. And so I reached out to her and she, she's like, all right, And she's always like, oh, Julia always makes me do all these, because she likes to set up the vlog and do her, she has a very simple format that she uses that works for her for putting out consistent content. And I was always like, we're going to do more and it's going to be different. And you're my best friend, so you have to. And she's like, all right. But so I got her on board. We recorded the song. We got together this great crew who were all kind of starting out in their video careers, and they were just so excited and amazing to do it. I got some friends of mine from Vine. If you watch, you'll see Simone Shepherd, Sean Sauce. I can't think of who else is, but you'll see some Viners in there. And we just kind of all got together, and I had a vision of sort of recreating my childhood in the summer. So I started putting together images that was like hopscotch and like water guns and lawn chairs and pigtail, like all these things that just reminded me of childhood. And that's sort of what you see in the Royals video, is like, it's like a summer growing up when you don't have pools and you don't have a lot of money, but you have to kind of make it work and you still have so much fun. So that's kind of the vibe with the video. But it surprisingly, because of the timing, did so well. And we ended up making like quite a bit of money from that. We split it with the producer. But it was just one of those things where gut feeling, spontaneous vision, did it, put it out, and it did well. Don't know why. some I was like, had no expectations, and then some things that I think are going to do really well do horribly, and you make negative dollars. But it's all about, I think, just the joy of the creation process. And the more I found, the more I can stay true to just my heart in those moments, that's when it's the most rewarding. And whenever I try to get into my head to like make a hit or get it to go viral, then it never works. And also it's not as fun.
Yeah, and we could all tell that the passion that you have for the music industry and just to produce music in general has always been throughout your career, and not only that, but throughout your life as well. So can you talk about what started that passion for you for music?
Yeah, I mean, I have photos of me as a child with a little keyboard on my lap playing songs. It's just one of those things where it's what I also, sorry, I have my brother's cat, by the way. I'll start that over because I know we're not live, but it's just, if you hear cat sounds, just let me know and we can.
Yeah, no worries. He can make an appearance.
Do you want to ask that again? Just
Sure. So what started the passion for you for music?
Yeah, so going back, some of the first photos I have of myself as a kid, I have a piano on my lap, or I'm performing something, or I'm getting the neighborhood kids together and we're creating like a musical or a play. And I think it's just one of those things where it's like, you don't have to look too far. I think we often lose sight of our passion as we grow up because of what we think we have to do, or the pressures from parents or society. But for me, it's like really just that simple. I was just born with a love for music. I mean, my dad tells the story of, I think a lot of parents, when they want to calm their kid down, they like put them in the car and drive. But my dad, just before I could even form complete sentences, we were driving, and he said, I heard a song for the first time, and by the second chorus, I was singing the chorus. And he was like, what? So I think there was just something where I naturally loved it. And yet I never thought I could make a career out of it, because, I don't know about you, it's not like I was growing up, my parents were like science and this and that. My mom was a little more do whatever you love, but my dad was very, this is, and so that was in my head, and things just kept happening that pushed me back into music. No matter how far I strayed from it, no matter how I tried to get away from it, it just, like, my first job at Good Morning America, I was set to be a reporter, ended up on air 3.5 years later as a musical artist. So I couldn't get, like, it was just the universe decided, whatever the higher power is, it's like, you're doing this. So here I am, it's still doing it. No matter what, that's just the one thing. Since I was little to now, it's just what I love.
Well, yeah, that's awesome, especially doing what you love. There are always going to be roadblocks in life that, kind of prevents that a little bit. But we all know at the end of the day, what you love in this world keeps you going, and it keeps you, progressing and just takes you to where you need to go.
Yeah, and I will say one thing I learned along the way, and I've had this conversation with a lot of other artist types, is why I talked about doing some of the consulting work is because, as you know, I've built up social media channels, and then different brands would kind of come to me first to hire me, and I hate this word, but to hire me as like an influencer to promote their brands back in the Vine days, which was super fun then. But from there, I started building relationships coming from a TV background, and kind of combined the two and was able to start giving advice to brands who really wanted to create a social presence in a community rooted in stories that come from the heart. Because that's always my thing. Like, it has to come from the heart or it's not going to work. And and so the thing about that is really important to distinguish, I think there are some people that can truly make their career just solely based on doing what they love. I started to notice when I was able to fully make a living on music, I started to sort of hate it, and I started to resent it a little bit because it put so much pressure on me. And it was like this one thing I love suddenly became like a have to, it was in my head again, like going back to earlier, I started to think of like what I had to do. And then, so I realized that a lot of times doing the consulting work or other outside projects actually helps make me more creative for the music and the art to just kind of flow through. So, I think that is something that's important to share, especially if they're younger listeners, because it's like we grow up sometimes thinking like you have to put everything into this passion. And I do think that in order to make it, you have to like not have a plan B. But at the same time, each person is different, and if you can observe like, you know what, I'm actually a better artist if I don't have to worry about paying bills. Or you might be someone that's like, I'm so driven to make, you know, money 100% from this, that fuels you. So it's just really about knowing yourself and seeing what's going to help you be the most free to create.
Well,
Anyway, I don't mean to get like, I guess as I'm getting older, I'm like, listen, children, let me help you.
well, hey, you're giving that wise wisdom, and we do appreciate it.
Or
You
as
know,
I drink my coffee, yes.
yes. So speaking about sharing that wisdom and sharing your passion with others, of course you do that a lot with your social media presence. I mean, obviously that started way before Vine, all the way in YouTube, and then making your way from YouTube all the way to Vine, and then making your way to Instagram, and then making your way to Twitter, and then so on and so forth. So can you talk about that first step, that first YouTube video that you made that was like, you know what? This social media thing is going to be for me?
Yeah, I resisted it for a long time. I was like, I don't know about the covers. Like, are people going to take you seriously as an artist if you're covering other songs? I mean, it was a very different time. And it kind of so I was very resistant to social media. I didn't understand it. I moved to LA after Good Morning America. After I was on the show, I had a lot of press. I moved there. I ended up doing a reality show when that was a thing for Bravo called Misadvised. Great opportunity. I got to move to LA. They played my music. It was super helpful because it got my first album on the iTunes songwriter playlist genre. I don't even remember now. I got it into like a popular confusing Spotify and iTunes. It got it where it needed to go to get the listens. So that was great. Things were good. And then I think through Taryn, because Taryn, my best friend from college, had built up quite a big YouTube channel. So she was pushing me a bit. And so I started to kind of like ease in. I'd go once in a while to her shoots. I'd do stuff with her. It's like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then I think one day I was just like, it's now or never. I'm going to try it. And once I caught that bug, I loved it. I loved being able to instantly put out music, not have a label, have full creative control. Covers or originals, it didn't matter. Collaborating. My favorite thing to do is collaborate with people. So suddenly it's like all these different artists. You're learning from other artists. That's how I learned to harmonize, actually, was through doing YouTube covers, because like I didn't know how to harmonize before, but suddenly I'm like in a recording studio on the regular, and the producer's like, you got to harmonize. I'm like, so I'm, learning as I'm listening what harmony is. And so it's kind of like those things happened. And it was a really great stepping stepping point to get to the next level, which ended up becoming Vine. Vine, so King Batch, he was doing a YouTube video with Taryn and I, Blurred Lines. It's a little bit embarrassing of a video now, but kind of fun to watch. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
Oh no, of course.
Yeah. That's, I'm like, whoa, I watch it now. I'm like, I was like going through a breakup at the time. And I just remember I was kind of like, it was one of those things where I was like real depressed and losing all this weight, but I had like a random 6-pack because I wasn't eating because of depression. I was like, we're going to do a video. And that's how Blurred Lines happened. It's just like the backstory of that. So anyway, not really relevant, but, so he was on set and he's like, I just started using this thing called Vine. Let me show you what it is. And he showed me and we did a Vine together and instantly 7,000 followers. Like after he shared it, because he was just posting like 5 times a day. And what I learned from watching Batch and just from being friends with him is like, he would post literally 5 to 7 times a day. And then he would see what worked and what didn't. And then he would delete what wasn't working. But he was kind of like teaching himself. And there was something really exciting about this. And so all us Viners would kind of get together at Day Storm's house, who's another YouTuber. And we would just, we all had part-time jobs. Like I was babysitting at the time. Leanne was like working at a car dealership. I mean, people were like, we'd shoot and then we'd have to hurry and get to our jobs. And at that point, Vine was really funny because you couldn't edit it. So I remember everyone would be so involved. We'd have one person directing one, and it was such an involved process, and everyone cared so much about each other's Vines. And sometimes we'd get that 5th shot, and we'd be like, okay, like, I'm like, I gotta go pick this kid up at school. I was late quite a bit because of Vine, but we'd be like, I gotta pick this kid up from school. Like, what? We gotta get the last shot, and then you like, someone messes up, and you're like, no, and you have to start again. But it was such a beautiful time because it was like we all went from just doing this thing we love to being able to quit, our first and second jobs that we were doing to try to become artists full time. And so it was a really cool experience. And then I think from there, Instagram just became a natural, once you start sharing your life like that, it just becomes very, like anything, it becomes part of the routine. And I think there are times now where I have such mixed feelings about social media now because I'm so grateful in so many ways. But I noticed that there's a desire for me to be more present because at the height of my momentum with social media, I started to have massive anxiety. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about because we see all these, influencers with millions of fans, but it's like, what goes into that is you're constantly on there. You don't ever shut off. Everything is content. Everything is collaborating with this person. It's just, there's a nonstop sort of way that your mind works. And I notice now I can go back and look at all these events that I went to, like family events and big, monumental things that I don't even really remember experiencing because I was so busy trying to film it. And, even I'm with my brother right now. We were joking about how a few years ago we had a family reunion and the whole time I was shooting Vines. It's kind of fun in some ways and people like appreciated it, but it's, you're like in a director mode. So anyway, that's a very long-winded way of answering your question, which is basically to say the thing that always worked was consistency. Being super consistent. If you want to build, you have to be consistent, engage with your audience, know who your audience is, know like what you're talking about and who you're communicating to. And also your own mental health has to come first. And it's just one of those things where if you want to really build something, you have to be willing to give it 100% and be consistent. And if you're someone who's like, oh, I don't know if I could do that, it's just good to be aware of. You can build the team that can help do that. It doesn't mean it's not for you. It's just like knowing what's going to make you happy and what's not.
Well, that's awesome, especially with, like you mentioned before, about Vine kind of putting people together, putting creators together. And then not only that, you meet people through Vine, and then you meet people through YouTube, and then you meet people through Instagram. And then little by little, you're creating those networking connections. And then, at the end of the day, you're you're surrounding yourself with people that have the same passion as you or have the same motive as you. So I think that's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm starting to see it with TikTok now. I see all the TikTokers getting together, and it does kind of make me nostalgic because there's something so pure about creators. And again, I think of the early days are what make me the most nostalgic, like getting together with Sunny Mabry and Simone Shepherd, and like we're just all in a room. And it's just you have like a bunch of like mad geniuses. And I just remember like so many times I'd go to Steph Barkley with ideas and I'd be like, isn't this so great? And she'd be like, well, she'd like take out her notepad and stuff and she'd be like, now what if you did this, this, and then this shot? And I'm like, and so it was like going to school, like YouTube learning to
Yeah.
harmonize. But it's like you're suddenly around people that have studied all these different sides of whatever their art is and just learning together and creating stuff and this real desire for each other to exceed. It's like if I did a Vine with Amon Alpha Cat and it did well, I'd be like, yes. And if it didn't, I'd be like, oh, should we reshoot it? Like you just get invested and it is a nice way to build a community. And I'd say that's the happiest as far as like being a creative. I don't like to create solo. Having that community was the happiest I ever was when it came to creating. That was like a very special time that, I mean, even as I talk about it, I get like a little emotional. I'm like, it was just a really special time. We're all growing together. So it was nice.
Yeah, it was awesome, especially during that time where I was just a wee teeny little freshman kid over in high school during those times. But now that I say it, I sound more like a child. But regardless, but it's awesome though to see that, like I mentioned before, seeing that passion and that creativity throughout just groups of people and seeing your favorite viners together, like, oh my god, it's Julia Price and Alpha Cat, or maybe it's Julia Price and Steph Barkley doing all these crazy things. And still to this day, it's great to see that friendship still alive and well, and it feels like you guys haven't missed a beat at all.
Yeah, that is one of the really nice things is that it's, even before I left, I made sure to see him on because I'm like, I'm going to be gone for like a month. So, and Steph unfortunately lives on the other side of town. So she's basically in a different state. So, but they're like, you go through this special time together and it does create some really incredible lifelong friendships. So that is very real.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking about transitioning from your, of course, your online presence and your social media success, I also want to talk about your success outside of the social media world and talking about performing live. I'm talking about performing in concerts over here in the Los Angeles area. And of course, you did get to travel, I believe, some parts of the States as well. So can you talk about kind of that experience of, traveling and getting to perform and showcasing your passion to others?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something about specifically Hotel Cafe in Los Angeles. I remember when I lived in New York City playing at the Hotel Cafe, and that's where Katy Perry started, and all these like incredible art. Sarah Bareilles played a bunch there, and so there's something about performing in Los Angeles that every single time I do it, no matter what, I have to pinch myself because it feels a little bit like a dream. And I recently just played before the pandemic. I played at Hotel Cafe and I was so in the green room. I was just so nervous, so nervous. And the LA community has some of the most, it's kind of like Nashville in the sense that the songwriters are just so talented. And I just have moments sometimes where I'm like, how am I up here right now? How am I actually slotted in this roster? It just blows my mind. So there's something about LA that still feels surreal. I've been there 10 years. I have moments where I'm like, God, I can't believe it. And then I think traveling has been really cool because I just love to travel. I mean, if you look at any of my Instagram, it's like, I just feel really inspired. I like to connect with different cultures and be outside of my comfort zone and learn. And being able to perform in different places has really taught me a lot, not just as a human, but as a performer. Like one time I played a show in Texas and I actually got to the venue and I remember seeing a dog in the bar. It was like a very long time ago. There was a dog in the bar and like someone wasn't wearing shoes. I'm not even kidding. And I was like, okay, I need to go back to my like some of my more country roots, and I need to show up as that kind of performer because it's not really about me. It's about giving people something that an experience that they take forward with them. So I played some of my songs, and then I remember I Googled a few country songs. I was winging it. That was fun, and it worked. And I was like, okay. So it's kind of like those moments. And then now that I'm at a different level in my career, I think what's been really cool is being able to play in Portugal and Canada and like all these different places that I maybe would never have gone before, to sort of show up with a piano and be able to play. It's pretty amazing. And I have to say, that's the one thing, as much as I love social media, there's nothing like getting in front of a live audience, because you can see people's faces, you can see what's working and what's not, and it's very like, to receive that kind of energy from people like cheering or singing back to you, that makes me feel the most alive when I'm doing that. So social media has been great in the sense that it leads to booking those events. But at the end of the day, I would same with wanting to collaborate with people. I didn't like shooting vines alone. I liked working with people. It's the same thing. I feel inspired when I get to be with people. But yeah, to be able to like play all over the world is really, really cool. And then of course there's sides of it where you're like, all right, I'm in a hotel room by myself and it's an amazing view, but like I kind of wish I had like my friends with me, or like the person, or sometimes it's not even like, if I'm traveling a lot, I'm like, I don't know how to have a relationship right now. So there's definitely that side too. I think with everything you ask, I'm like, here's the like rose-colored version, and here's sort of the reality, because I think it is important to share both. But that being said, yeah, it's pretty great. It's a pretty great gig. It's a good gig. Well, it makes all the early days of like, dragging my piano around the country. Oh my gosh, I can't even. Some of the gigs I played when I was the first few years starting out, like just bad, just everything that you could imagine going wrong. But it builds character. That's
hey,
for sure.
Just like my grandfather always said, everything happens for a reason. So it's not necessarily, if something goes wrong. I mean, hey, maybe there was a reason why it went wrong. Maybe it wasn't supposed to happen that day, or maybe it wasn't supposed to happen at that moment. But at least you can learn from that and just say, okay, what could I do better? Or maybe, maybe another opportunity will come down the way. So, I mean, everything happens for a reason.
I like that. Your grandpa he and my best friend would get along. She literally should tattoo that on her. Every time I go to her with something, if I'm like, oh, this just happened, this fell through, she's like, everything happens for a reason. And it seems so cliche and simple, but yet it is cliche for a reason, because it's like you want to use it again and again and again, like, because it makes sense. If I look back at anything that didn't work now, I'm so glad it didn't work. Whether it's a relationship or a business opportunity or something, I can be like, whoa, I wouldn't have been ready for that. Thank God that thing didn't happen then. It's just, it makes sense. You trust the process of life.
Of course. Like I always say, it's always about process over outcomes. It's always about the process rather than the outcome.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's good. Okay, I'll remember that. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, that's actually coming from a wrestler. So.
Wow. Wait. You were a wrestler? Hold on. Let's talk about you for a second.
No, not me. I'm talking about that saying is coming from a wrestler. That's not. That's
okay. You seem like you could. We'll just go with it. You're like a broadcasting wrestler in my mind now.
There we go. All right, Julia. So once again, I do want to thank you for this awesome conversation. But before we go, I always like to give the final question, something that always kind of impacts the interviewee. And with you, something that I felt like has impacted not only yourself but also the people around you is your spread of positivity. And the way that, whether it's through a social media post or you're sharing something that's very impactful with the world today, or even if it's, talking to someone, whether it be Taryn or even if it was. So can you talk about like what it's like spreading that positivity?
it's funny hearing that, because I think Amon said this to me, actually. It's funny, Amon's come up 3 times now. He said this to me the other day too. He was like, "You're always in a good mood," and I'm like, "What?" Because I think there is. If you listen to a lot of my music, I have a lot of sad songs. I like writing sad songs, and I think there's this just as much as I feel the positivity and the happiness, that only comes from feeling the other side of it too, and going through hard things, and having those days where I'm like, yeah, everything happens for a reason, but I don't know what those reasons are right now, and I don't really want to be positive today, because it's just whatever that is. I think there's definitely emotional waves, and I have learned that that's part of what helps me create. So I'm very appreciative of it. And I just genuinely think that there is something to be said about understanding that we are all going to die. And it sounds very morbid, but what I try to think about it at least once a day, because it inspires me to avoid waiting to do things, having conversations that are hard, having an experience within reason. It's not like I'm going to blow through my savings account to do whatever I want. But I think when I start to feel that sort of thing, I try to think of like, well, I only get this human experience for a certain amount of time, and I don't know how long that will be. I think some of it comes from having, I have an immune disease called psoriasis, and it's not like preventative from making, I don't have pain every day or any chronic pain or anything, but it definitely can control my energy levels. So I know that it's like you have a limited time, do whatever you can do to use the energy you have to try to make it a little bit better. So yeah, I think honestly, it's just knowing that this isn't gonna last forever. And there's something really beautiful about reminding yourself that every day. Because I try to think of like, if I knew I was gonna not be here in a week, what would I want to do this week? And usually it comes down to family. And the more I talk to my family, the more positive I am. So I think it's having good people around too. And I think anytime you have those like leftover things, like one thing that's been really helpful is like cutting out energy that doesn't support that. Because if you're around people that are very negative, or aren't honoring your boundaries, or aren't supporting you, or don't believe in your dreams, like that's going to affect you. And I think that's something that's just happened, I guess, as I've gotten older and older. I'm like, oof, I love you. You're on a journey that does not align with mine right now. So I'm going to go this way and you go that way, and like no hard feelings, but like it's just not. And I think being able to say no to those things helps me to say yes to myself. And in general, again, it's just, having the right people and trying to live every day to the fullest. Yeah. I really shouldn't have had coffee before we talked. I feel like I'm like just going on and on and on, but that's a great question. And I have to think about it more, because it's always weird to hear of my, you're such a positive person. And I'm like, what? I am? I just like life. I just really enjoy it. I think it's like, and even the hard times, there's, no matter how hard it gets, I think, here's one thing I do want to add too. My mom always said this to me, and she's like, when you start to feel down, you have to help someone else. You have to do something for someone else, because it gets you out of your head. It gets you out of the cycle you're in right away. And it reminds you to be grateful for what you do have. So that could be your health. That could be a great job. That could be a relationship. That could be, simply walking outside and feeling the sun. And I think that's also one of the reasons I love travel. It's like getting you out of your own everyday world. But if you help one person, just reminds us that the world is much bigger than our little bubble in our room, 4 walls.
That's a beautiful message, and a beautiful story, because like to me as a person that's trying to spread positivity, that's kind of the main purpose of life for me, is that kind of more just to, making someone else's day, or making someone else smile if they're having a very crappy day, or, whatever the case may be, just knowing that I made someone's day, or made someone smile, or made someone's, week, or, just by one message on Instagram, or even just talking to someone face to face. It's, to me, that's what is more self-rewarding than anything money can buy.
Well, you're way ahead of your years already to know that. It took me my 20s to learn that, you know? Because
Well,
I think
now,
it's like, that's the thing. It's like, for me, when I was younger, success was such an achievement based, goal oriented thing. And I just realized that wasn't making me happy. I mean, there are elements of it that made me super happy and driven to work hard. But at the end of the day, yeah, it really, what matters is the impact you leave on the people that you might not even know, yes, but just people you care about every single day.
well, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Julia, so much for being a part of this interview. It was a great conversation, especially between two people who are so passionate about what they do, and especially, spreading that positivity. It was awesome getting the opportunity to speak with you. Of course, as a lifelong fan since the way beginnings, like I mentioned before, since about 2011, and seeing about 10 years now, it's been absolutely amazing. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, and it was such an honor to be here. It's really, I really do appreciate, especially long term. I mean, we're basically, at this point married. So it's like, I just was so excited to come on, and um, grateful to be a part of your growing up journey. I mean, that really means a lot to me.
Well, that's awesome. Well, once again, if you guys don't know, you can always follow Julia Price anywhere, and anywhere you can find her. Make sure link will be down in the description for all of her social media. And of course, how can I do an interview without forgetting? You could get a personalized shout out from Julia Price herself on this app called Cameo, which you could get. Support the best ever, which is over here on Cameo, which the link will be down in the description. She did a birthday song for me, so that's always a beautiful thing as well. So she could do, pretty much anything of the PG standard. So until we meet again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you, Julia, so much once again. And I will see you guys again in the next interview. Boom.